I watched a movie recently, and because we're besties and I love you and appreciate you and don't want to rob you of this experience, I need to tell you about it because it is the best movie I've ever seen in my life. And it is Troll 2.
Tired of this. Come with me, all of you.
Goblins don't need to justify their cruel acts.
I know I don't usually do videos like this, but I'm very excited to tell you about this movie, and if you've seen it, I think you'll still enjoy this adventure down memory lane. And there will be spoilers, but I think it'll be all right. I think it's okay. I highly recommend you watch this movie, but I highly recommend you watch this video because it'll give you a lot of context that you don't need. But I'm not going to mince words. Let's just get into it.
Actually, I like popcorn.
So recently, Caleb sat me down and said, "Have you seen Troll 2 before?" Because we were trying to figure out what movie to watch. And I said, "No, I haven't even heard of that. What is that?" And he said, "I'm not going to explain anything. I'm just going to turn it on." So I watched it just raw dog, no context, right in, and I was baffled. Never laughed so much in my life, I don't think, at a movie. I'm going to give you a little context before I get into it, just so you have that at least, and I think it'll make it funnier. But yeah, Troll 2 isn't just bad. It's a masterpiece of accidental comedy that required an Italian film crew, a Mormon cast, and a $100,000 budget to achieve cinematic immortality. So the 1990 film, directed by Claudio Fragasso, has become the gold standard for so good it's bad. I think it was invented by this movie, earning devoted midnight screenings worldwide and spawning an acclaimed documentary about its bizarre legacy, which I also recommend you watch. But what began as a sincere attempt at horror filmmaking in the Utah desert became something far more entertaining. A perfect storm of language barriers, amateur actors, if that, just regular people who've never acted before, and vegetarian goblins that somehow created the most watchable, unwatchable movie ever made. So the genesis of Troll 2 began with Italian filmmaker Claudio Fragasso and a screenwriter wife, Rosella Drudi, who previously collaborated on titles like Zombie 3 and Rats, Night of Terror. Don't know if you've seen those. I haven't. I'm gonna watch them now, though. But Drudi wrote the script after becoming frustrated with friends turning vegetarian. I get that to another level. And she later described it as, quote, ferocious analysis of today's society. And if you watch this movie, you'd never think it means anything. But knowing that, I appreciate it even more now. And it's about the evils of plant-based diets, basically. And producer Edouard Sarlouy, sorry if I said your name wrong, who had financed Killer Clowns from Outer Space, definitely don't need to watch that, but you can, approach them with a rubber goblin mask he'd acquired rights to and requested a family-friendly horror film without blood to avoid censorship issues. And by God, did we get it. So the production assembled in the summer of 1989 with a 3-week shooting schedule and a $100,000 budget. Who would do that? Oh wait, we did that. But it was 1 week, and it was like a quarter of that budget. So, mad respect. And the all-Italian crew, who spoke virtually no English except for the costume designer Laura Gemser, descended upon the Mormon communities of Morgan and Porterville, Utah. And this cultural clash was immediate because the chain-smoking, wine-drinking Italians were baffled by the local Mormon population just abstinent from any alcohol, tobacco, or caffeine. And the makeup artist, Maurizio Trani, spent the entire shoot trying to unsuccessfully convince the Mormon crew members to drink wine with him, which is like so funny to me. And the casting process became legendary for its chaos because George Hardy, an Alabama dentist with zero acting experience, which you'll see, won the role of Michael Waits by shouting, "You can't piss on hospitality," to a room of 9 chain-smoking Italians who understood nothing he said, but loved his energy, and that line makes it into the movie.
And you can't piss on hospitality.
And it is one of the best lines of the movie. And he was paid $1,500 and had to provide his own wardrobe. Meanwhile, child actor Michael Stephenson secured his role by screaming loudly in the smoke-filled audition room, and most remarkably, Don Packard, who played the disturbing store owner, was cast while on a weekend pass from a psychiatric hospital at the University of Utah. And you see him in the movie, dude, and he looks like you think he's a really good actor, and then you're like, oh no, that's just him. And he later admitted to be heavily under the influence of marijuana during the filming and having murderous thoughts about his child co-star. You can't write this, but it was written. Luckily, the child co-star was okay.
What are you going to do to me, Daddy?
And the title, Troll 2, represents one of cinema's most brazen marketing deceptions because the film was originally called Goblins. Because newsflash, there's no trolls in this movie. It's also not a sequel to any movie named Trolls. It's just a standalone movie called Trolls 2 because the marketing people knew that the movie Trolls did somewhat good in the box office and they didn't think that Goblins would do that well, so they're just like, call it Trolls 2. Maybe that'll get people in. But it didn't because the movie only made like $1,200 in theaters. It was $1,263 worldwide. It's one of the lowest theatrical grossing movies in cinema history. At least we beat that. House on Eden for the win. But that's just a little lore drop about the movie. Let's just dive into what this movie's about.
Well, I've been called a lot of things, but not a monster.
There's nothing I need more than a sanctuary where I can actually unwind and get quality sleep. Because your girl struggles with that sometimes. And if you didn't know, you spend a third of your life in bed. So why settle for anything less than the absolute best? And that's why I'm so grateful that Helix Sleep reached out to partner with me. But little did they know I already had been using a Helix mattress for over a year from them, so this just worked out really nicely. And I'm that type of sleeper that tosses and turns all night, and I run at like 400 degrees, so I struggle with getting a good sleep. But ever since I got a Helix mattress, everything has changed. For me and for Caleb, actually. Because we actually took their sleep quiz, which is awesome and honestly genius. And it asks about your body type, sleep position, whether you sleep hot or cold. I'm hot, as we know. Not like that, but also maybe, I don't know. It's up to you. It's your... But these are all factors I never really thought about, especially sleeping with a partner. And we were matched with the Helix Midnight Luxe, and honestly, it has been a game changer. And my sleep tracker shows I'm getting deeper, more restorative sleep. Instead of lying awake thinking about case files and, you know, just the world in general right now, which, like, let's not get into that. I actually fall asleep faster and stay asleep through the night, which was rare for me before. And when I wake up, I have the mental clarity and energy I need to deep dive into the madness of this world and present them to you with a focus that they deserve. Because sleep is quite literally one of the most important things that you need in life. And the difference from my old mattress is night and day. I'm waking up refreshed and ready to tackle anything the day throws directly into my face. And what I also love about Helix is that they've been named the most awarded mattress brand. That's impressive. And they've been reviewed against hundreds of competitors and they consistently come out on top. Plus, they ship it right to your door for free. And you get 100 nights to try it out, which I think is completely fair and really awesome. And if you're not completely satisfied, they make returns seamless. So make sure to get your Helix mattress today and go to helixsleep.com/callmechris to take advantage of their Labor Day sale exclusive partner offer, which is 27% off site-wide. But trust me, quality sleep makes all the difference in life, and you deserve a good sleep. So go to helixsleep.com/callmechris, take the quiz, and get your Helix mattress today for 27% off site-wide. Thank you again to Helix Mattress for sponsoring this video and supporting this channel, and let's get back to it. So the film opens with what is perhaps cinema's most unintentionally disturbing bedtime stories ever. And Grandpa Seth sits by young Joshua's bed, spinning a tale, Princess Bride Grandpa style. Well, Princess Bride is one of my favorite movies. They totally ripped that off from 3 years ago. But he spins a tale about a traveler who encounters evil goblins in the forest. And you see these goblins for the first time, and you realize what you're about to encounter, okay? What kind of movie this is about to be. Because they're just children with spirit Halloween masks on, and it's awesome. And these little children goblin things chase this traveler who looks like Peter Pan for some reason. It's like Peter Pan and Robin Hood put together. His hat is crazy. Also kind of looks like the main character from Princess Bride, but whatever. But they chase the traveler into the woods and he's terrified. But then the traveler falls over and then he wakes up and he sees a beautiful girl who has fake freckles the size of Tic Tacs on her face for some reason. And she offers him some green jello goop substance of some sort and he drinks it because she's hot. What else is he gonna do? And then he quickly transforms into a half man, half plant and starts sweating chlorophyll green goo and he's eaten by the goblins. Just a classic bedtime story your grandparents tell you, you know? Some of us read Goodnight Moon, others tell tales of horrific deaths involving small man-eating vegetarian goblins. But wait! There's more unsettling news. Because as Grandpa Seth is finishing up the story, Josh's mom flicks on the light and asks why Joshua is still up. And then Joshua replies, Grandpa Seth was telling me Play the clip.
Grandpa Seth was telling me to stop.
And then a plot twist reveal like no other, less than 5 minutes into the movie happens, and the camera pans out and shows there's no one in the rocking chair. Grandpa Seth died 6 months ago. But for some reason, the chair's still moving, as if someone was just sitting in there, which is, we're not going to question this movie, okay? We're just going to let it be. And this casual revelation about ghostly storytelling gets barely a mention, as if deceased grandfathers regularly appearing for bedtime stories is perfectly normal in the Waits household, because the mom's just like, not again. You know, it's like, oh man. But what we do get is like some quick lore drop, and that happens throughout this entire movie. There's like, it's all pretty surface level, but then sometimes the characters will just drop so much context and character development in like 3 seconds, and you're like, what was that? And we get slapped with that a lot. And here, the mom sits down on the bed and she's like, you know, your grandpa died 6 months ago and I'm upset about it and I'm his daughter and your dad's upset about it and your sister's upset about it and you just need to get over it. You need to banish him from your mind, quote unquote, which is a crazy thing to say to like a 9-year-old. And then she asks him to remind her about the diagnosis that the doctor gave him, you know, so the audience has context as to what's going on because we can't figure it out on our own. You know, this movie really just spoon feeds us and I love it. But Joshua says that the doctor said, I just make inventions in my subconscious and I really need to stop. So we get that context and then we hard cut to Holly's room, which is Joshua's sister and the daughter of the family. And her boyfriend and friends at that point are breaking into her room through her window, you know, as they do. And then we get slapped in the face with some more lore drop, just really quick, about 20 seconds worth. Just getting fed with the silver platter again. And we figure out that the boyfriend is just obsessed with his bros and they have to go everywhere with them, and she doesn't like that. She wants to have alone time with her boyfriend, which, like, fair enough, queen. And she says that, my family's going to a little town called Nilbog for a month, and I really want you to come with me, but I don't want your bros to come with me. And then he says, well, can't my bros come? And she's like, no. And he's like, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Peace out, right?
Oh, Elliot, it will be wonderful.
And my boys?
If you bring them with you, I never want to see you again.
And then a little bit before that, we cut to the parents talking about their trip. He's like, we're going to Nilbog for a month. There's 26 people in the town. We're gonna live like peasants, like our ancestors did.
We'll be living like our ancestors did. Yeah, we'll be peasants and farmers.
The dialogue in this movie is crazy. But anyway, the boyfriend agrees to meet the family in the morning to head off to Nilbog. But then we hard cut to the whole family in the station wagon, which also turns into a different car by the end of the movie, by the way, which is crazy. Just the biggest continuity error I've ever seen in any movie. But anyway, we hard cut to the family in the car. The boyfriend's not there. He was late. He never showed up. And Holly's really upset about that. And the family's just like, shut the fuck up, Holly. Oh my God. And they try to kind of comfort her for about 10 seconds. And then the mom, unblinking, I don't think she blinks in this movie, by the way. She's like, hurry, Joshua, sing a song. That'll make everything okay. Sing a song. And the kid's like, row your boat. And she's like, row your boat. I love it so much. It's so funny. But seriously, that mom doesn't blink. But every dialogue situation in this movie feels like if aliens made a movie trying to guess what people sound like and talk like with each other, that's this movie. If that makes sense, you just need to watch it to know. But what Holly and the rest of the family don't know is that Elliot Holly's boyfriend actually is headed to Nilbog to surprise her, to kind of like win her back, but he brought his bros with him, his 3 bros, and they rented an RV and they're following the family. That's restraining order worthy, but whatever, we'll get back to that. And the only way that Elliot was able to convince his bros to come is that he promises that there's a lot of hot women in Nilbog, a place that has 26 people, and he's never been to this place ever. There's no questions in this movie. Everybody's just like, okay. And then we cut back into the family's car where Joshua falls asleep and has a dream about becoming a plant, half man. And he starts sweating that green chlorophyll juice, and his sister's talking to him in a fisheye effect menacingly about how he's eaten too much and how her and the family are going to eat him. And then the parents put on those spirit Halloween goblin masks and turn around. And in some of the best/worst practical makeup and effects I've ever seen in cinema history, Josh gets just impaled by some tree trunk or something. It's pretty awesome, pretty gruesome, but not bloody, so it's okay. And then he wakes up and he says, "No, don't eat me!" And the family turns around and they're like, "Classic Joshua." And the sister's just like,
Who wants to eat you, little brother?
it's so weird how they talk. But the family's just like unblinking as per usual and is just totally chill about the whole situation. Like this just happens on the reg. And then time passes and Joshua then sees a man on the side of the road with a sign that says, "Stop them!" And then they get closer and he realizes that it's Grandpa Seth, and then he tells his whole family to pull the car over, and they don't ask why. They don't say like, "Oh, why do you need to go over? What's going on?" The mom just says, "You need to throw up," and the kid's like, "Yeah." It's like that happens on the regular, like he just throws up all the time. This kid's got a rough life, I think. I think it's rough what's going on. But they pull over, he gets out, runs toward his grandpa, and then the grandpa drops some more lore, saying like, "You can't go to this town. You gotta turn around. This is bad. I'm getting creeped out, dude. You can't do this." And then the family's like, "Come on, Joshua, you gotta come back." And then he realizes that he's actually talking to what could be a murderer hitchhiker, just a middle-aged murderer hitchhiker. And the family's like, "Come on." And he's like, "Give me a ride." And he's like, "No." And then the family, nobody talks about it. He just gets in the car and they just keep driving. So he's hallucinating. Poor kid's hallucinating a lot. But I think at this point, that's the smartest thing they will do in the movie is driving away from what is probably a murderous hitchhiker. So at least they got that going for them. And then they're almost in Nilbog, but then they drive past the RV that the boys are in and they're stopped. And it's like, they're like half a kilometer away, but they're like waving the car down. For some reason, they know when they're gonna be driving by. And then the girl sees them and she's just like, "My stalker boyfriend." And then she goes, as if they could see that from like a kilometer away. It's like really fun. But they're like staying just outside of Nilbog, I guess. But they're in Nilbog, but they're not really in Nilbog, but they're in Nilbog. So then the family arrives in Nilbog. And immediately they notice that the town's eerily deserted in the main street. And the few visible residents are just like 30-yard glare staring at them through the window, just like, Debbie's here also. Look how big she is. But anyway, all these residents are just stone cold staring at them. And Joshua says like how creepy it is and how he doesn't like this place. But the parents are just like, that's just how country people are. Joshua, you idiot kid. Country people just don't have anything to do but stare at people from the city. I'd say you can't write this, but somebody wrote this, which is awesome. But yeah, country people just stand around and 30 yards stare you down until you want to crawl back into your skin. Don't you know that? That's common knowledge, Joshua. And also during this conversation, when the parents are telling him that, the camera's like this close. It's like, it's this close. They're like, that's just how country people are.
Lead the way, Farmer Waits.
And then they finally make it to their exchange house. I don't think I mentioned that also. And they definitely said that in the beginning. They're like, we're going to an exchange house in Nilbog. But I think I missed that part. But anyway, the whole idea is that they're exchanging homes with a family for like a month. So this family from Nilbog is going to stay at their house and vice versa. Doesn't really matter to the story. They could have just been staying at a random house. We don't hear anything about the family like being at the other house or anything. But it's fine. So they show up to these people's house And these people are also cold stone 30 yards staring at this family as they roll up. Really not nice people. They like swap keys or something, and then they bump shoulders like it's a 50s snap and gang thing, and one of the kids is like a Peaky Blinder for some reason. And then they're just like, all right, we'll have fun at our house and we'll have fun at your house. And then they don't bring in bags or anything into the house. They just talk about how hungry they are, and just they all go to the kitchen, and then there's just a feast laid out for them that's green. It's just all green, and no one says anything about it. It's just red flag number 52 in Nilbog. But yeah, everything has this weird like green icing over it. It's just like green milk, green bread, green meat, green corn, just green desserts, green everything. It's like St. Patrick's Day just threw up, but it's not St. Patrick's Day. And the only thing is said is the dad walks up to the table and he's just like,
Typical country hospitality.
and the family's like, hooray, yeah! Everybody sits down and starts to pass stuff around. And then it goes to Joshua, who's at the screen door, and Grandpa Seth is knocking on it, and he's just like, don't let them eat the food! Don't let them eat the food! He's just like torturing this poor little kid. He's like, I can't get my grandpa out of my head. Before the whole family starts eating, they all get it like almost in their mouth. And then the grandpa says, you have 30 seconds to figure out how to get them not to eat. And I don't know why there's a time limit to Grandpa Seth's ghostly powers, but he freezes time to make sure that Seth can go over and do something about the food, so they're all frozen like Joshua does the only thing that can be done. He doesn't hit the food out of their hand or, just yell or something. He just stands up on the table, unzips his pants, and pisses on everything. Pisses on all the food. I'm assuming in their mouths, because most of that food was mostly inside of their mouths. And then it just hard cuts to the whole family pissed at him, pun intended, for, pissing on the food. And the dad's just irate and throws Joshua over his shoulder. And then he gets to say that line that we were all saying. He's just like, you can't piss on hospitality, because it's good Southern hospitality. He says you can't piss on hospitality, and I love that line so much.
And you can't piss on hospitality.
Unintentional comedic gold. And then Josh is like in bed, and he throws him in bed, and he's like, what are you gonna do to me, Dad? And the dad then starts to like looks like he's taken off his belt, and you're like, damn, Josh was gonna get beat. Joshua can't catch a break. But then he just starts tightening his belt, and then he just says, I need to tighten my belt so I don't feel hunger pains. And you're just like, it's been like a couple hours since you've eaten. Calm down, okay? But then we get another like random lore drop where he's like, he thinks that Joshua is making the whole family do a hunger strike, and it's like a challenge. And then he drops this old lore that the dad's like, I used to starve when I was a kid all the time, so I've had more practice than you, so bring it on, bitch. And you're like, where did this come from? Like, you need to talk to a therapist. What is happening, Dad? I just feel bad for Joshua this whole time. Also, Joshua, best actor in this whole thing, for sure.
I'll see you tomorrow.
But I think this movie is like unintentionally just touching on some really serious notes that they never delve into, but you're just like, oh, okay. Goddamn, I want to hear more about that, but you never do. And then we cut to Holly's boyfriend, Elliot, and then his other buddies are Arnold, who's like a sensitive type who looks perpetually constipated for some reason, and then Brent, who's just a generic jock, and Drew, who exists primarily to increase the body count, basically, but you'll see that. But this, in their view, is just like a perfect opportunity for a guy's weekend involving minimal supervision and maximum hijinks. So they're all kind of settling in, and then Arnold, constipated looking guy, steps out of the RV just to kind of like, I don't know, for the next scene to happen, I think. We don't really know why he's out there. And he just immediately spots a gorgeous woman running for her life, terrified of something, into the woods. And then he decides it's a great idea to scream at her and chase at her full tilt and woo her or something. But he just screams and starts running at her as she's screaming and running from something, but now probably from him as well. Hormones, am I right? Can't keep it locked in. So he keeps chasing her and then tackles her to the ground. Romantic guy, I guess. And the girl asks if he's one of the monsters, and she's like freaking out, and he's like, no, I'm not.
You wanna see?
And then she says she's dying because they made her eat stuff, and he's like, oh, huh? Am I gonna get laid? Huh? And then she's like, there they "Arr!" And then these adorable little goblin monsters wearing masks or whatever show up, and then they throw a giant spear right into Arnold's shoulder. Poor guy. He just wanted to get laid by a girl he attacked in the forest. Karma's a bitch. And then it cuts to his buddies hearing him scream bloody murder in the RV, like they're in the RV and he's in the forest. And then they're just like, huh, must be him deflowering one of the Nilbog virgins. And you're like, what? But we ask no questions, we keep moving, because logic and this movie do not mix. So Arnold and hot girl number 2, who has no name, I'm just gonna call her hot girl number 2, run to this totally not weird or creepy house in the middle of the forest to seek refuge, I guess. But like such a trope, you know? Creepy house inside the middle of a forest. Who even does that? It's like embarrassing. Shut up. Anyway, then we go to one of the greatest performances in cinema history and one of the greatest overall moments in the movie, because enter Credence Leonore Gielgud.
This is my house.
And they enter Credence's house, and it kind of just looks like most millennials' houses with plants just kind of growing in every single corner. Maybe what sets it apart is the just sheer amount of dry ice and the cauldrons. But otherwise, just a millennial house. And then she walks out and she's got like these rotten teeth and she looks like witchy and crazy, and she's just like so overacty, but it kind of just makes it brings the whole movie together. You know, she's clearly a villain. You can't not know that she's a villain. And then she casually also just drops her entire lore in about 5 seconds. Literally says everything before they can even be like, my name's Arnold and my name's hot girl number 2. She's like, I'm Credence Leonore Gielgud, and my ancestors came from Stonehenge, with that crack in the middle of my wall in the back over there. And I am from ancient druid origins, and I am in finance or whatever, yada yada. She's not in finance, but you know, you get it. She's a witch or whatever. I don't really know what she is, to be honest.
Am I mistaken, or is there something wrong with the two of you?
And they're like, yeah, I've got impaled, and she's bleeding green from somewhere, and we need a hospital. And she's like, there's no hospital in Nilbog.
There is no hospital in Nilbog. We are used to curing ourselves.
The amount of times she just like opens her eyes is probably the same amount of times that the Waits mom doesn't blink, if that makes sense. It's a lot, and it's incredible. But she says that there's no hospital in Nilbog, and we cure things ourselves in Nilbog with ancient evil goblin druid green chlorophyll dry ice emitting juice scoop drinks. And they're just like, okay. So she brings out these beer mugs full of dry ice and gives it to them, and they're just like, go, 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 go. And then almost immediately after drinking, the music gets insanely sinister as f***, and hot girl number 2 just starts vomiting green slop, and Arnold's just in the back like, and for some reason, instead of, you know, trying to run outside of this creepy house and this woman that's trying to poison you, she runs further into the creepiest house. She runs up the stairs while choking. I've never personally choked on something and felt like I needed to do cardio, but what do I know, you know? But anyway, she goes upstairs and then just starts turning into green plant sludge, and it's really fun. It's like this like goopy slop crap, and it looks terrible and awesome at the same time. And then the little adorable goblins come and start eating up the sludge that is hot girl number 2. She's just sludge on the floor. She's like plant sludge. And then the greatest moment in this movie happens, and it pans over to Arnold, who's watching her with the drink in hand still, and he's looking up, and he says, just in case you didn't know what was going on, he says, they're eating her, and then they're going to eat me. Oh my God. Play the clip.
And then they're going to eat me! Oh my God!
It's the greatest line delivery I've ever seen in cinema. And how he didn't get an Oscar for that, we'll never know. But he has an Oscar in my heart. Just in case you didn't understand what was going on in the moment, Arnold swoops in with a silver platter of exposition. So it seems like this movie always wants you to know what's going to happen next, but then it just comes and slaps you in the face with the completely most unthinkable scene next after. It's just like a whirlwind, okay? It's a whirlwind of emotions because the next scene hard cuts to Holly just hard as dancing in the mirror, like... And then she like turns off the music, goes back in the mirror, starts talking to herself like we all do in the mirror. Okay. And then Grandpa Seth just appears in the mirror looking for Joshua. He's like, Joshua? Dude, where are you? I didn't know ghosts could get mixed up with like what room people are in, but he did. It's really funny. And then she screams and all the whole family comes upstairs and she's like, I just saw Grandpa Seth in the mirror. And then Joshua's like, see, I'm not crazy, Mom and Dad. And they're just like, you're crazy and you're crazy. You guys are stupid, dude. It's like, what is going on? And then the dad like goes in the mirror and he's like looking and he's like, Grandpa Seth's not here. And then he's like, are you still smoking dope, Holly? So we just get that drop of lore where it's like, is Holly hooked on dope? Like, what, when did that happen? We hear nothing about it, though, after that. So we're just going to assume she's got a bit of a drug problem or did in the past, I guess. She's like been in rehab since she turned 14 or something. I have no idea. We don't know. And that's the beautiful mystery of Troll 2, okay? So everybody leaves and Joshua stays because Holly's like, I ain't staying in this room. There's just a f***ing ghost in this room. Probably the only one with common sense in this movie half the time. But Joshua stays, looks in the mirror, and then Grandpa Seth's like, oh, Josh, it's you. And he's like, yeah, you had the wrong room, you idiot. What are you doing? You're supernatural. Don't you have control of this? But then Seth goes on to just tell him, like, you need to get your family out of Nilbog. It's a goblin kingdom. Duh. We knew that. And the kid's like, okay, man, I'm trying. But they're stupid as fuck. And meanwhile, no one in this movie has eaten anything. Everybody has just been fasting for 2 days. And Holly even comes down the next morning and is like, I've been fasting for 2 days. And everyone's like, yeah, we have too. And it's like, what is happening? Because the next morning, it cuts to the RV now. And one of the guys wakes up, we'll call him dumbass number 3, wakes up, looks in the fridge, and there's just milk in the fridge, Nilbog milk, which they never stopped for, and should be concerning that someone snuck in and put milk in their fridge. But then he closes it, asks the guys like, hey, do we not have food? And they're like, no, we didn't get any. Because everybody's just like fine with not eating. Like that one bitch in high school is like full off half a pretzel. You know, that's kind of how everybody is in this movie for some reason. But at least now he's like, I'm gonna go get some food. Okay, so I'm gonna go. And then he goes out of the RV and just full tilt sprints into town, which is crazy. I don't get why everyone in this movie likes cardio. Doesn't make sense to me. Okay, it's probably the most unbelievable thing about this movie. And then we cut to the family who comes downstairs and is like, where's breakfast, to the wife? Because, you know, wife things. And she's like, there's no food. All there is this Nilbog milk in the fridge. And they're like, okay, well, I guess we gotta go into town. So Joshua and Mr. Waits go into town to get some food as well. And then cuts back to Sprints McGee, dumbass number 3, who's like full tilt sprinting down the road with sweat all over him. And then local suspicious sole cop of the town pulls up asking if he needs a ride. And the dumbass number 3 is like, yeah, okay. No questions. And then he hops in the car and then the cop's immediately like, are you hungry? And he's just like, okay. And he gives him a green sandwich. And then he just starts munching it down. No questions again. And then he pulls up to the general store where quite literally 26 dudes are all shoulder to shoulder, just mad dog staring him down, but still walks into the general store. And then he goes into the general store and then we meet psychiatric patient, real life psychiatric patient, general store manager who comes out like, hey, are you looking for something to eat? And then dumbass number 3 is like, yeah, do you have bacon? Do you have coffee? Do you have this? And he's like, no, that's disgusting. Ew, no, that's the devil's water. Oh no, that doesn't this. But you know what we do have? We have milk. We have Nilbog milk. It has a lot of vitamins. That's literally what he says in the movie. Play the clip.
Special milk, high in vitamin content.
So this is the same milk that was already in the fridge, mysteriously in the RV, and he still buys that milk, even though he didn't want that milk and already had that milk. So that doesn't make sense, but we don't ask questions about the movie, we just keep moving on. Then he goes outside, and the 26 men out there come up to him, and they're like, hey, your friend came up to us and told us to tell you that he's in a really creepy house in the middle of the forest, and that you need to go there and meet him. And he's just like, okay. Then he goes to the house. And that's when we hard cut to the creepy millennial house once again, where Credence is giving her all, like she always does, monologuing hard to someone we don't see in the camera just yet. And then it's revealed when she's done said monologue about 28 seconds later.
Morning, my little flower.
That it's Arnold, who was now turned into half a plant and his face is like kind of missing. I kind of love the makeup, even though it's absolutely terrible. It's kind of awesome at the same time. Poor guy just wanted to chase down a terrified Nilbog tail and get lucky, but now he's a plant. So I guess that's kind of poetic karma, if you ask me. Then we cut to Mr. Waits reading a vegetarian recipe book, because I'm assuming those are the only books that they sell in Nilbog because they're all vegetarians. Assuming he's just being converted in some way at this point, and I think the vegan teacher would like Nilbog. I think she should move there, personally. And Joshua's just kind of hanging out, and that's when he walks up to a car's rear view mirror just to try to conjure up, his dead grandpa, like you do. But instead, he sees the truth. And in the rear view mirror, he sees the sign of Nilbog behind him and sees that in reverse, Nilbog says, "Goblin!" Dun, dun, dun. Because Nilbog spelled backwards is goblin.
It's goblin spelled backwards!
This is their kingdom. That's my favorite. This is their kingdom. I love that.
This is their kingdom!
I laughed out loud so hard when I saw that. It was fantastic. Just in case you can't read or you didn't put that mystery together by the beginning of the movie, Joshua points it out to you. And I appreciate that. And then after that, he just leaves. He leaves his dad sleeping in public. He's just taking a nap in public and just jets off on his skateboard and does his own kick-ass stunt skateboard move on the way out just to make sure that you know that he didn't come to Nilbog to around. And then we cut to dumbass number 3 walking through the forest to the creepy house who the creepy people told him to go to creepily while drinking milk when he's tired and hot, like you do. And then he realizes it's chunky and disgusting, so he spits it out, and it just reminds me so much of Anchorman when he says, "Milk was a bad choice." And then we hard cut back to Credence showing up at the Waits house in Nilbog, fully breaking and entering, but Mrs. Waits doesn't give a f*** because, country hospitality. And she didn't care about anything. I hope to be one day the level of not caring as much as Mrs. Waits is in this movie. And also, Credence has a green cake that says welcome on it, so breaking in is fine. But wait, welcome spelled backwards is emo clue. It doesn't mean anything. That's not in the movie. I just made that up. That was a bad joke. And the daughter kind of pops her head in. Holly pops her head in, and she's just like, hey. And then Credence says the weirdest things to the daughter, saying she's provocatively delicious. And the mom's like, what? But okay.
Appetizing? Provocative.
But the mom is just like, oh, you shouldn't have made a cake. And Credence is like, oh, it was no problem at all. And then we just cut to Joshua, cruising through the streets of Nilbog, not really knowing where he's going or what he's doing. But then he just randomly stops in front of this incredibly creepy open barn and has just no survival skills and just walks right in there. And in there, he climbs up to the top roof to spy on the people below, because all of the townspeople are now in this barn doing a weird sermon thing. And this, I'm assuming the mayor of the town is giving this sermon about how meat is bad, basically, and gross. And he's like,
"In by flesh, I mean all that stinking, disgusting meat."
And all the townspeople that are sitting in chairs are like, ew. And he's like, hot dogs. And they're like, blech, ew. It's like a child who hates meat wrote this movie trying to convince his mom that it's yucky. I love it. Okay. And also the family that was supposed to go to the big city house is still in Nilbog, and they're at this town church weird meeting thing. So the kid's like, whoa, that's weird. And you see the little, Peaky Blinders kid, and you're like, whoa, that's probably why they put that hat on them, so we would recognize him in this part of the movie, which I appreciate. And they all talk about not being human, just in case you didn't know that they're goblins in disguise. We know that for certain now, which is nice. And then Joshua on the roof accidentally moves his skateboard and it crashes into the floor below. So they all like look up and you're like, oh no. And then a hand just comes up and gorilla grips Joshua's poor little head. And then we just cut out of it and you're like, oh my God. And then we go to Holly just slamming on the RV door. This is probably the quickest scenes in the movie. She's just slamming on the RV door. They haven't seen each other yet, her or her boyfriend, Elliot. And then he comes out and she's like, choose me or your friends. And he's like, what? And then she just punches him in the gut. And then we cut out. It's how I wish that Grey's Anatomy scene actually went.
Pick me, choose me, love me.
Also, throughout this video, I apologize. I keep calling it Trolls 2. It's Troll 2. Just want to apologize for that. Jay called me out, and I feel very bad. It's Troll 2. Anyway, let's get back to it. And then we cut back to Joshua being force-fed ice cream by the goblins in this creepy farm thing. But then the dad just miraculously shows up from his public nap just in time and runs into the creepy barn to be like, what are you doing to my son?
What are you doing to my son?
And they just say, we're just trying to force feed him ice cream. It's not a big deal. It's like we're strangers in a creepy barn and we're trying to force feed your kid stuff like poison ice cream, but like you need to calm down, okay? And then Joshua breaks free and runs over to his dad and he's just like, just laying it down for his dad just because his dad doesn't really get anything, you know? The parents in this don't understand anything that's going on. And he's like, Dad, they're goblins. And also, they have a 4-leaf clover on all their cheeks, which I didn't notice until he pointed that out. And then I'm like, is this movie called Troll 2 and they're goblins, but he's insinuating that they're leprechauns? They keep me on edge in this movie. I have no idea what the f is going on, but I'm buckled up, all right? I don't know what's going on. And then he also tells his father that Nilbog spelled backwards is goblin, just in case he didn't hear him screaming it in front of him while he was taking his public nap. And then you'd think that'd be enough to convince his father to get the hell out of Dodge, but the dad's just like, it's not that big of a deal. And then he's also like, hey, weren't you the family that's supposed to be in the big city? And then they were just like,
we had car trouble.
And he's like,
Okay.
and then they just head back to the house in Nilbog because no big deal. And then as they're running out to go back to the house, the group of people in the barn just straight up mad dog stare him down again. And then the leader mayor guy says, we need time for some things to happen. We need time for some things to happen. That's what I'm going to say the next time somebody asks me to do something or to go out. And I'm just like, let me check. No, I need time for some things to happen. I can't. You need to have patience until tonight, okay? The dialogue is genius. And I think about how this could have actually been written by a human being. And then I remember Italians who don't know English made this with people who don't know Italian. And then I'm back on board. I'm like, yeah, this makes sense.
We need time for some things to happen.
And then we cut to the dad and Josh driving back to the house. And then they see Elliot and Holly in the RV. And the dad's pissed because he's like, what's this guy doing here? So he pulls over. He confronts Elliot and he's just like, come back to the house. For reasons that I don't know. I don't understand. And then that means Elliot's last friend standing so far, I guess, is left with the RV. And he's like, what am I supposed to do? And he's just like, figure it out. I gotta go back to the house to get reamed out by this dad, which never happens, by the way. But I gotta go back to this house. And he's like, okay. And we cut back to dumbass number 3 getting to the creepy house and finding Arnold, now half plant, half man. And Arnold is like, grab the pot and drag me out of this place. Dumbass number 3 is trying to like drag him out of the house, and it's really funny because he's obviously actually dragging him and it's really heavy, and it's like such an awkward moment where it's like silent. But then, of course, Credence shows up and literally slaps dumbass number 3 across the room onto her suspiciously sexy bed, I guess. And then she brings out a chainsaw to cut pieces off of Arnold to make a green slushy thing for dumbass number 3. Which okay, yeah, of course. And then Dad, Holly, and Joshua arrive at their Nilbog house to find out that the whole town somehow beat them there, even though they had an insane head start, and they're just partying with the mom, who's just like getting down with the townspeople, and they all like brought a bunch of food, and then the dad comes in like, what's going on here? And he's like, we just wanted to apologize for like force feeding your kid poison ice cream in a creepy barn, so we brought you guys some leftovers, and we thought we'd just party with you guys. And the dad's like, okay. Joshua not having it, okay? He's like, they're goblins, this is crazy. And the dad's like, go to your room, you little psycho kid. So Joshua goes to his room and he tries to summon his grandpa in the mirror, you know, like you do. Then a goblin just jumps out of the mirror and starts attacking Joshua, and the poor guy's fighting for his life. And then it cuts back to the family downstairs, like, and all the townspeople are like egging them on to eat the food, but they're like never quite eating the food. And then it cuts back to Joshua fighting for his life, and then back to the family like almost eating food but not quite eating food. And then it cuts back to Joshua again, and then gangster grandpa Seth shows up with an axe and cuts off the goblin's hand, which then in parallel cuts off Credence's hand back at the creepy house, which is awesome, which means that it was her all along. Oh, we had no idea she was evil. She just like looks and sounds and is evil, but what? That's crazy, dude. Cut back to straight up gangster grandpa, who's like, we need to put out the fire, Joshua. And Joshua's like, what fire? What are you talking about? And then gangster Gramps just whips out a homemade bomb and says, guess. Like he's about to like just light this whole house on fire, I guess. I'm like, what's going on? Oh my god. But I didn't realize ghosts could make bombs and cut off people's limbs, so I'm gonna tread carefully on my next ghost hunt. Basically, I've learned that from this movie for sure. But then Credence puts her arm into that magic glory hole in the back of her house, and an arm grows back, so I guess that's like magic or something, which is kind of cool. And then gangster grandpa and Joss just try to light the house on fire, but then the creepy mayor goblin guy grabs the homemade ghost bomb from the grandpa's hands, or the kid's hands, and then he tries to send gangster grandpa back to hell. Was he in hell before? This is again another lore drop that we never understand, but it would make sense based on the axe murdering and arson-y that gangster grandpa would have maybe come from hell, because you know he's straight up G, dude. But he's sweet otherwise, you know? So I don't know. We don't need to know, okay? It's a perfect movie. I don't need to know, okay? I'll let my imagination do its thing. But then, Gangster Grandpa, being the straight up G he is, Uno reverses shit and lightning bolts Goblin Mayor and turns him into a burnt up goblin. And then all the townspeople and the family come out from the house, and the jig is up. They see the goblin on the ground. The dad's like, what is this? My son's not crazy? And then the sheriff, who's outside with them, who's also a goblin, is like, we're gonna kill you. And then the family does this. After they get threatened, their lives get threatened, they do this. Slowest walking you've ever seen. Just the survival skills of this family are numbed out. I don't think they have that. I don't think they have fight or flight. They just have freeze and flail. And then we cut to Credence, who just turns herself into hot chick number 3 through the magic glory hole in the wall to go seduce dumbass number 4 back at the RV for reasons, I guess. But first, we go back to the house at night, and the family is just watching the outside as all the townspeople and the sheriff are like, here are some sandwiches for tonight. Just eat them so we can eat you. Otherwise, we'll be forced to kill you violently. As if them eating poison and slowly turning into goop green plant goblin food isn't violent, but what do I know, you know? But I choose violence, for sure. And then we cut back to dumbass number 4, who sees hot Credence on the TV, and then he sees her outside the RV, so he goes out and just doesn't question anything. Nobody questions anything in this movie, okay? They just go with the flow. They're a go with the flow type people. And then he's like, come on in, you're hot, you know? And she just has a piece of corn the whole time, and then they start to kind of get freaky with it, putting it in between their mouths because she like wants him to eat it really bad, so they're like making out between the corn. He eats it because, you know, she's hot. And And then we just cut out of there. And then we go back to the Waits family holding a seance out of nowhere with 150 lit loose candles trying to get Gangster Grandpa back to help them or whatever. I think the prop guy in this project was trying to sabotage this movie by burning down the set, which I don't blame him at the time, but I'm glad it didn't work. But they end up conjuring this bright light that is Gangster Grandpa Seth, and he just tells Joshua to concentrate. Doesn't say concentrate on what, but he just says concentrate, and Joshua seems to know what happens, and then he kind of passes out, and the mom freaks out, and that's when all the goblins start breaking into the house and start wreaking havoc. And then that's when the fight scenes start to happen, and they're definitely not funny at all, definitely not comical, and definitely super badass. And then somehow, during all of this, Joshua teleports to the creepy forest house during the fight scenes and then starts to just get strangled by a loose goblin, I guess. But then, of course, Gangster Grandpa Seth swoops in and one punch kills this goblin. And he always does this like smile after he smites a goblin. He's like, and it's awesome. And then he just ominously gives Joshua a backpack and tells him, like, open this when you think you need it. And Joshua's like, what? And he's like, just do what I say. And he's like, okay. And then he tells Joshua to just touch the creepy glory hole wall for reasons we don't know. And he does. And then it cuts back to the family that's now surrounded by like 22-foot tall goblin things that I could definitely take, I feel like. But luckily, they say, our queen is calling us, and then they just disappear out of nowhere. Really good effects, by the way. Roll the clip. And then we cut back to Joshua and Gangster Grandpa holding the wall thing, and he's like, okay, bye forever, Joshua. Good luck. And then he just disappears, and we never see him again, and Joshua's like, wait, what? And then Joshua gets picked up, stranglehold picked up by Credence, and then he's force-fed again, or tried to be force-fed green gloopy glop stuff. But then, of course, he remembers 1 minute and 32 seconds ago, his grandpa told him that this backpack he was given was for a reason. And he looks in the backpack and he takes out a quote, double-decker bologna sandwich!
A double-decker bologna sandwich!
And then the goblins and Credence just grimace, and she says the weirdest things. She's just like, don't do it. Think of the fats in your blood. Think about the cholesterol. Think about the toxins. Just sounds like a middle-aged couple, like a wife telling her husband that like his blood panel came back with too high of cholesterol and that he can't eat the steak because of that. It's like, wait, what? Is that what's going on? Are they just really health conscious? I think that's what it is. Goblins are just like overly health conscious. They're basically the vegan teacher. Sounds like. But Joshua, like a straight up G, like his grandpa before him, munches on the sandwich and everybody's just like, like it hurts them somehow that he's eating meat or something. And then he throws it at them and then he goes over to the wall like just eating the sandwich aggressively. And then somehow, and we don't ask questions on this channel, the family shows up at the house, this creepy house that they didn't know existed, about like just miles away in about a 2-minute time period. And then Josh is like, yeah, guys, come over here, put your hands on the wall and concentrate. Again, we don't know on what. We will never know what they had to concentrate on to make all the goblins and Credence die, but they did the thing and it is what it is. And then they're touching the wall and then the goblins and Credence are like burning and melting and everyone dies. And then we just cut to them driving home. And then the other family members don't go in the house, but the mom and Joshua do. And then the mom goes to the fridge and just pulls out a fresh bowl of apples. That seems suspicious to me, but she just starts eating them and being like, just eat an apple. And Joshua, in his right mind, he just went through a little bit of trauma, just killed a whole goblin kingdom village or whatever, and a witch or something, is like, I'm not that hungry. So he goes upstairs. But then as soon as he gets upstairs, he hears whispering, and the whispering is telling him to eat up. And he's like, whoa, what's that coming from? So he walks downstairs and he's listening and he can't hear the voice anymore, but he hears a baseball come down the stairs. And then he picks it up, and on it, it reads in green letters, "Yummy, Mommy is so good." And then Josh just yells, "Mommy!" And then he just starts running around the house, and he goes into the bathroom for some reason. And for some reason, there's a bunch of green sludge in the bathroom, like in the bath, but the mom was never in there, and no one was ever in there. So I don't know, but we don't ask questions here, okay? And then he runs into the kitchen where his mom was. And then you just see the goblins just gobbling his mom down. And they have like this prosthetic nude woman on there, but it's fake. But they're just like eating green pudding off of her, basically. And a lot of the goblins' masks are just masks that don't move, so they're just like shoving green pudding into their mouth holes, and it's awesome. Okay, it's terrifying. It's the scariest thing I've ever seen. And then one of the goblins look up and says to Joshua,
"Do you want some, Joshua?"
And Joshua goes, and then the movie ends. But what a great twist. M. Night Shyamalama Ding Dong Who. You know, I'm just saying, Troll 2, best movie there is. And that's it, basically. Go watch it. I know you just heard everything about it, but you still need to go watch it, and watch it with someone. Okay? Make it a drinking game. And if you're younger than the drinking age, I don't know, what do kids do? Make homemade bombs with their ghost dead grandpa? I don't know. But, that's it. If you like this kind of video, let me know. This was really fun for me. I really enjoyed doing this review. Let me know if you guys want any more of these. Let me know what other like movies or shows you want me to review. More worse, the better. If you like this video, please like this video. This is obviously best YouTube channel ever. And until next time, I will see your beautiful face. Okay? Bye.